Soon, possibly within months. The genetic modifications spreading through our population aren't random. They're preparing us for this evaluation, making us into something that can either fight the hierarchy or serve them. President Chen, Earth's civilian leader, stood slowly. "Admiral, what do you recommend?" Torres looked around the room, seeing fear and determination in equal measure on the faces before her. These were humanity's best and brightest, the leaders who would guide their species through its greatest trial. "We accelerate everything," she said simply. "Every military program, every research project, every colonial expansion. We have maybe 6 months to become something the hierarchy has never encountered before." "And if we can't?" President Chen asked quietly. Torres's smile was cold and sharp. "Then we make sure they remember us. Every species they've eliminated before accepted their fate eventually, but they've never faced humans before. They've never faced a species that becomes more dangerous when threatened." The meeting continued for hours, but the die was already cast. Humanity would prepare for war on a scale beyond imagination, against enemies whose power dwarfed anything they'd yet encountered, but in the depths of space, other forces were already moving. The edge of known space. The vessel that emerged from the void between galaxies was vast beyond comprehension, a construct of dark metal and impossible geometry that seemed to bend space around itself. It had traveled for eons to reach this small spiral galaxy, drawn by signals that indicated the emergence of a new threat. On its bridge, if the twisted collection of angles and surfaces could be called that, beings of pure thought communicated, in harmonics that would have driven lesser minds to madness. "The gardeners report success," one entity observed. "The young species has begun the transformation." "Too early to judge," another replied. "Many have seemed promising at this stage. Few survive the final evaluation." "This one is different. They adapt faster than predicted. Their capacity for violence exceeds all previous measurements. All the more reason for caution. Violence without wisdom is merely destruction. If they cannot be controlled, they must be eliminated." The massive vessel began to scan the galaxy with senses that could detect the quantum signatures of individual thoughts. What it found made the collective consciousness pause. Remarkable. They are already beginning to merge consciousness across their entire species. In a few more cycles, they will be a true hive mind, but one optimized for warfare rather than cooperation. Fascinating and dangerous. Signal the advance fleet. Begin preliminary evaluation. How many ships? All of them. If this species is truly what the gardeners believe, we cannot afford to underestimate them. And if they prove unsuitable? Then we will do what we have done to 1,000 species before them. We will make sure they pose no threat to the greater order. The vessel began to move, its passage through space causing stars to flicker and die in its wake. Behind it, a fleet of similar constructs emerged from the void, thousands of them, each one capable of scouring entire star systems clean of life. The hierarchy was coming. 6 months later, New Geneva Colony. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Evolution, watching her daughter play in the hydroponics bay below. The child moved with the fluid grace that had become common among the younger generation, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to catch thrown balls that would have been impossible for baseline humans. Sarah herself had changed too. The neural modifications that had begun during the war with the collective had continued to evolve, connecting her consciousness to the growing network that linked every human mind. She could feel her crew around her. Their thoughts, their emotions, their unwavering determination. They were no longer individuals. They were becoming something greater. "Captain," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Commander Jackson, her tactical officer, his expression grim. "Report. Long-range sensors are detecting massive gravity distortions at the edge of the system. Whatever's coming, it's big. Really big." Sarah nodded, feeling the information flow through the neural network to every human in the colony. Within seconds, defensive preparations were underway without a single order being given. "How long do we have?" 6 hours, maybe 7. Sarah looked down at her daughter once more, then activated her communicator. All hands, this is Captain Chen. The moment we've been preparing for has arrived. The hierarchy is here. She paused, feeling the resolve of 8,000 humans flowing through, her consciousness like fire. Remember what we are. Remember what we've become. We are no longer the species that crawled out of caves and learned to make fire. We are something new, something that the universe has never seen before. The ship shuddered as its systems came online, not just technological systems but biological ones. The Evolution had been one of the first vessels to complete the transformation, its hull now a hybrid of metal and living tissue that could adapt to any threat. We are humanity evolved, Sarah continued. We are the storm that answers when innocents cry for help, and today we show the hierarchy what that means. As the alien fleet began to materialize at the edge of the system, Sarah felt a moment of fear, not for herself but for what humanity was becoming. The genetic modifications had given them incredible power, but at a cost. They were losing something essential, something that had made them human in the first place. But then she looked at her daughter, saw the love and hope in the child's enhanced eyes, and knew the truth. They weren't losing their humanity. They were transcending it. All ships, she commanded, prepare for battle. It's time to see if the hierarchy is ready for us. The first shots of the greatest war in galactic history were about to be fired, and humanity in all its evolved glory was ready to remind the universe why predators should never be underestimated. In the depths of space, the Shadaki watched and waited, curious to see if their greatest experiment would survive its final test. The species they had shepherded from primitive warriors to galactic predators was about to face its ultimate challenge. Would humanity emerge victorious? Or would they join the countless other species that had failed the hierarchy's evaluation? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The storm had been awakened, and it was hungry. The stars burned cold against the void as Admiral Kexthor watched his fleet tear through another human defense line. His massive command ship, the Eternal Scythe, carved through space like a blade through silk. Around him, 1,000 Vorthak warships moved in perfect formation, sleek predatory vessels that had conquered 17 star systems in just 2 years. Another pathetic attempt, Kexthor growled, his forearms working the control interfaces with practiced ease. His scaled hide rippled with satisfaction as human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. These mammals learn nothing. The bridge crew of reptilian Vorthak warriors hissed their agreement. They had good reason to be confident. In 73 battles across human space, they had never lost. Not once. Their energy weapons sliced through human armor like paper. Their shields deflected every missile, every plasma bolt, every desperate last attack. But today, something was different. Admiral, his tactical officer Sekvar, called out with uncertainty in his voice. Long-range sensors are detecting an anomaly. Kexthor's yellow eyes narrowed. Explain. A single human vessel approaching from the outer system. It's massive, sir. Larger than anything in their fleet records. On the main display, a ship materialized from the sensor data. Even Kexthor felt his breath catch. The vessel was enormous, easily 3 times the size of his flagship. Its hull was a deep metallic gray, scarred and battle-worn, with strange geometric patterns etched along its surface. What is that thing? Sekvar whispered. Before anyone could answer, every communication channel erupted with a single transmission. A human voice, calm and steady, filled the bridge. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system. The Vorthak bridge fell silent. Then Kexthor began to laugh, a harsh grating sound that echoed through the chamber. One ship, he said, wiping tears from his scaled cheeks. One ship against my entire fleet. These humans have finally lost their minds. He opened a channel. Human Captain, I am Admiral Kexthor of the Vorthak Empire. Your species amuses me. Surrender now and I will grant you a quick death. The response came immediately. 15 seconds. Kexthor's amusement vanished. The audacity of these creatures never ceased to amaze him. All ships target that vessel. Let's show them what happens to those who time's up. The Defiance moved. It didn't accelerate like a normal ship. One moment it hung motionless in space. The next it was already moving at impossible speed, closing the distance to the Vorthak fleet in seconds. Energy readings spiked across every sensor as the massive human ship opened fire. But these weren't normal weapons. Beams of pure white light lanced out from the Defiance, and wherever they touched, Vorthak ships simply ceased. Not exploded, not destroyed. They flickered out of existence as if they had never been there at all. Impossible, Kexthor roared. Our shields. Shields are useless, Admiral, Sekvar reported, his voice shaking. Those weapons are passing through them like they're not even there. We've lost 200 ships in the first salvo. The Defiance spun through the Vorthak formation like a dancer, its weapons reaching out to touch ship after ship. With each contact, another vessel vanished from existence. The perfect formation that had conquered star systems dissolved into chaos as surviving ships scattered in all directions. All ships retreat, Kexthor commanded. Fall back to... A white beam swept across the Eternal Scythe's portside. Half the ship simply disappeared, leaving a clean, impossible cut through metal and electronics. The bridge tilted as artificial gravity fluctuated. Hull breach on decks 7 through 24, an officer reported. No, wait. There is no hull breach. The decks are just gone. Kexthor stared at the tactical display in horror. In less than 5 minutes, the Defiance had reduced his 1,000-ship fleet to scattered debris and fleeing survivors. The same fleet that had never known defeat was running like frightened prey animals. Who are you? He whispered into the comm channel. Captain Chen's voice came back, still calm, still steady. We're the ones you should have left alone. As the Eternal Scythe limped away from the battlefield, its engines failing, Kexthor caught one last glimpse of the mysterious human ship. It hung in space among the wreckage, its hull gleaming with an inner light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kexthor knew fear. Chapter 2. The Message. 3 days after the Battle of Ray, Kepler Prime, the Vorthak High Command gathered in their war chamber on the fortress world of Threshmar. The massive stone hall carved from the living rock beneath the planet's surface had hosted the planning of countless conquests. Today, it felt more like a tomb. Admiral Kexthor stood before the War Council, his once proud bearing broken. Bandages covered half his body from injuries sustained when his flagship was nearly cut in half. The other 11 surviving ships from his fleet had limped home with similar wounds, not just to their hulls but to their understanding of the universe itself. Explain, commanded Supreme General Vorthak, his massive frame looming from the obsidian throne. His voice carried the authority of a species that had crushed 47 civilizations. How does the mighty Kexthor, conqueror of the Centauri colonies, return to us with 11 ships from 1,000? Kexthor's 4 hands trembled as he activated the holographic display. The recorded sensor data from the battle filled the chamber with ghostly light. The humans deployed a single vessel, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. Ship designation UES Defiance. Mass, approximately 2 million tons. Crew complement unknown. Weapon systems. He paused, struggling with words that still seemed impossible. Weapon systems that ignore our shields, that erase matter from existence, that operate on principles our scientists cannot even begin to understand. The hologram showed the terrible moment when white beams reached out from the human ship, and Vorthak vessels simply vanished. General after general leaned forward, their reptilian faces reflecting the same disbelief Kexthor had felt. This is some kind of recording error, declared General Morthak, slapping his clawed hand against the table. No species has such technology. We have conquered starfaring civilizations for 1,000 years. We know what is possible. Then explain this, Kexthor said quietly, and zoomed in on one particular sequence. The display showed the Defiance moving through space, not accelerating, not decelerating, but somehow stepping from one position to another as if space itself bent to its will. The laws of physics seemed to have no meaning for the human vessel. Supreme General Vorthak rose from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. "If this recording is accurate," he said slowly, "then we face something unprecedented, something that threatens not just our expansion but our survival." A younger general, Klektos, stood up. "Supreme General, with respect, it's one ship. Even if it has superior technology, what can one ship do against the full might of our empire? We command 10,000 vessels across 100 systems. You speak like a hatchling," Vorthak rumbled. "Did you not watch the recording? This vessel destroyed nearly 1,000 ships in minutes. If the humans have more of these weapons..." He was interrupted by a communication alert. The chamber's main display activated, showing the worried face of a communications officer. "Supreme General, we're receiving a transmission from human space. It's being broadcast on all channels simultaneously. Every world in our empire is receiving it. Show us." The display flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human woman. She appeared to be in her 40s with short gray hair and steady blue eyes. She wore a simple uniform with captain's insignia. Behind her, the bridge of a starship was visible, but not like any human bridge they had seen before. The walls seemed to pulse with soft light, and the air itself shimmered with barely visible energy. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship." "Defiance," the woman said. Her voice carried an odd quality, as if it came from a great distance. "This message is for the Vorthak High Command." Vorthak leaned forward. How did the humans know they were watching? How were they broadcasting to every world in the Empire, simultaneously? "Your expansion into human space ends now," Captain Chen continued. "You have 3 standard days to withdraw all forces from the 17 systems you have occupied. You will return all prisoners and pay reparations for the colonies you have destroyed." General Vorthak hissed with outrage. "The arrogance! Do they think we will bow to demands from inferior mammals?" But Captain Chen wasn't finished. "If you refuse these terms, we will demonstrate that the battle at Kepler Prime was merely a warning. We have been patient with you because we hoped you might see reason. That patience is ending." The display flickered, and suddenly the view expanded. Instead of just showing Captain Chen, it now revealed the bridge around her in full detail, and standing at various stations were other humans. But they were unlike any humans the Vorthak had encountered. These figures seemed to glow with inner light. Their eyes held depths that suggested intelligence beyond anything mortal. When they moved, space itself seemed to ripple around them like water. "We are what humanity becomes," Captain Chen said, and now her voice carried harmonics that made the stone walls of the war chamber vibrate. "We are your future, and your past, and your present. We are the echo of what you forced us to become when you chose war over peace." The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak leadership in stunned silence. General Klektos was the first to speak. What were those things? They looked human, but they moved like gods," Kexthor finished quietly. Supreme General Vorthak stood motionless for a long moment, his mind processing implications that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare, about physics, about the nature of reality itself. Finally, he spoke. "Send scouts to the nearest human system. I want to know what we're really fighting." But even as he gave the order, Vorthak felt a cold certainty settling in his chest. The Vorthak Empire had built itself on the principle that superior technology and ruthless tactics could overcome any enemy. For the first time in 1,000 years, that principle was about to be tested by something that existed beyond the rules they thought governed the universe. Chapter 3. The Truth Revealed. The Vorthak scout ship, Silent Fang, drifted at the edge of the Kepler system like a shadow among the stars. Captain Yisek had volunteered for this reconnaissance mission, though he was beginning to regret that decision. 3 days had passed since the mysterious human transmission, and every hour brought new questions that had no logical answers. "Captain," his sensor operator called out, I'm detecting the human vessel. The Defiance. It's just sitting there in orbit around Kepler Prime. Yisek studied the readings. The massive human ship hung motionless above the planet like a sleeping giant. No patrol routes, no defensive formations, no signs of alertness at all. It was as if they were waiting for something. Are they aware of our presence? Negative, sir. We're operating under full stealth protocols. They show no signs of detecting us. That should have been reassuring, but something about the whole situation felt wrong to Yisek. In his 15 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming danger. Take us closer, he ordered, but slowly. I want full spectral analysis of that ship. The silent Fang crept through the outer system, its advanced stealth systems masking its presence from conventional sensors. As they drew nearer to the Defiance, the readings became more and more bizarre. Captain, the energy signatures are unlike anything in our database, the science officer reported. The ship's hull appears to be constructed from a material that doesn't exist in known physics, and the power source, it's reading as if they're tapping directly into the quantum vacuum itself. That's impossible, Yisek muttered. No civilization has mastered zero-point energy extraction. Sir, there's something else. I'm detecting life signs aboard the vessel, but they're strange. Human baseline, but with energy patterns I've never seen before. It's as if their very atoms are vibrating at a higher frequency than normal matter. Before Yisek could respond, every system on the bridge lit up with alerts. The main display flickered and changed, showing not their own sensor readings but a view of their own ship from the outside. Captain Sarachen's voice filled the bridge. Captain Yisek of the Fourth vessel Silent Fang, please join us aboard the Defiance. We have much to discuss. The bridge fell silent. Their stealth systems were the most advanced in the galaxy. Detection should have been impossible. How did they? The sensor operator began. His words were cut off as a shimmering portal opened in the center of the bridge. It wasn't a transporter beam or any technology Yisek recognized. Space itself seemed to fold inward, creating a doorway between the two ships. Captain Chen stepped through the portal as casually as walking through a doorway. She was exactly as she had appeared in the transmission. Middle-aged, calm, wearing a simple uniform. But as she moved, Yisek noticed something that made his scales crawl. The air around her seemed to bend light, creating subtle distortions that suggested she existed partially outside normal space-time. Please don't be alarmed, she said, looking directly at Yisek. We're not here to hurt you. We simply need you to understand what you're really fighting. What are you? Yisek whispered. Captain Chen smiled sadly. We're what your war created. What humanity had to become to survive your crusade. She gestured, and the bridge around them changed. Not physically. They were still aboard the Silent Fang. But suddenly they could see beyond the walls, beyond the ship, beyond the local space-time continuum itself. Your species believes in linear time, Chen explained, as impossible vistas unfolded around them. Past, present, future following in sequence. But consciousness itself exists outside that framework. When a species faces extinction, when every possible path leads to death and suffering, consciousness finds alternatives. Yisek saw flashes of images, human colonies burning under Vorthak weapons, children fleeing through smoke-filled streets, entire worlds reduced to glass and ash. We tried to fight you with conventional weapons, Chen continued. We lost. We tried diplomacy. You ignored our pleas. We tried hiding in the outer systems. You hunted us down. So humanity did something unprecedented in galactic history. The vision shifted, showing laboratories hidden deep beneath Earth's surface. Human scientists working desperately on projects that defied known physics. Volunteers undergoing procedures that transformed them at the quantum level. We stepped outside linear time, Chen said simply. We became something that could exist across all possible timelines simultaneously. We became humanity's future, reaching back to save its past. Impossible, Yisek breathed. No species can manipulate causality itself. No species has ever faced complete extinction by an enemy that showed no mercy. Chen replied. Desperation breeds innovation, Captain. When you have nothing left to lose, you discover that the universe has far more flexibility than anyone imagined. The visions changed again, showing the construction of the Defiance. But it wasn't being built in any conventional sense. Instead, it was being willed into existence by minds that had transcended normal reality, assembled from materials that existed in quantum superposition until the moment they were needed. The ship that destroyed your fleet doesn't just exist in this timeline, Chen explained. It exists in all timelines where humanity survives. Its weapons don't just destroy matter, they edit it out of the causal chain entirely, as if it never existed in the first place. Yisek felt his worldview crumbling. Why are you telling me this? Why not simply destroy us? Captain Chen's expression grew infinitely sad. Because we remember what we used to be. We remember when we solved problems through understanding rather than force. We're giving your people one last chance to choose a different path. The portal reopened behind her. As she stepped toward it, she paused and looked back at Yisek. Your Supreme General has 18 hours to make his decision. After that, we will do what must be done to protect our past selves. And, Captain, she fixed him with those impossibly deep eyes. When you report back to your superiors, tell them this. We didn't become gods to rule over others. We became gods to ensure that no one would ever again face what we faced. The portal closed, leaving the Vorthak crew alone with their shattered understanding of reality. Yisek stared at the space where she had stood, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. Finally, he turned to his communications officer. Send an emergency transmission to High Command, he said quietly. Priority Alpha. Tell them we're not fighting humans anymore. We're fighting something that exists outside the normal laws of physics. Something that might be older than the stars themselves, wearing human faces out of mercy, as the silent Fang turned toward home. Captain Yisek couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed the end of the Vorthak Empire's expansion. Not through defeat in battle, but through the realization that there were forces in the universe far beyond their comprehension. Forces that had once been as mortal and vulnerable as anyone else, until desperate necessity transformed them into something that could rewrite the fundamental rules of existence itself. The great war chamber of Threshmar had never felt smaller. Supreme General Vorthak stood before a holographic display showing the impossible. Real-time images of every major Vorthak military installation across the Empire. But these weren't standard intelligence reports. Somehow the humans were providing them with a view of their own defenses. This is their final message, Captain Yisek reported, his voice hollow from what he had witnessed aboard the Defiance. They want us to understand exactly what we're facing. The display shifted, showing vast human vessels materializing from seemingly empty space around each Vorthak stronghold. Not attacking, not threatening, simply existing where they hadn't existed moments before. Each ship was similar to the Defiance, massive and scarred, glowing with that same inner light that suggested they operated on principles beyond normal. Physics. How many? General Morthak asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Our analysts count approximately 10,000 vessels, Yisek replied, but the humans have made it clear that number is flexible. They exist across multiple timelines simultaneously. They could be one ship or 1 million, depending on what the situation requires. Supreme General Vorthak studied the readings with growing dread. Each human vessel showed the same impossible energy signatures, the same casual disregard for the laws of physics that had governed warfare for millennia. His empire's greatest achievement, the ability to field massive fleets across dozens of star systems, had become meaningless in the face of an enemy that could edit reality itself. Status report on our defensive capabilities, he ordered. General Klektos stepped forward, his usually confident demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. Supreme General, our weapons are useless against their technology. Our shields might, as well be made of tissue paper. Every strategic advantage we've built over centuries of conquest means nothing against an enemy that can exist in multiple timelines at once. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant rumble of the fortress world's core. For 1,000 years, the Vorthak had built their society on a simple principle. Superior firepower could overcome any obstacle. Now, they faced an enemy that had transcended firepower entirely. There is another consideration, Yisek said quietly. During my encounter with Captain Chen, I observed something crucial. These beings still remember their humanity. They still value life, still prefer mercy to destruction. But that mercy has limits. He activated another section of the display, showing energy readings from the human ships. These measurements were taken continuously over the past 18 hours. Notice the pattern. The energy levels are steadily increasing. They're not just waiting for our response, they're building towards something. Something that will happen whether we reply or not. Vorthak leaned forward. What kind of buildup? The kind that suggests they're preparing to do more than just destroy our fleets, Yisek replied. Captain Chen spoke of editing things out of the causal chain entirely. I believe they're preparing to remove our entire civilization from the timeline. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow, not death, complete erasure. As if the Vorthak had never existed at all. They could do this, General Morthak asked. Based on what I witnessed, they could probably do much worse, Yisek said. The question is whether they will choose to. Supreme General Vorthak closed his eyes and considered options that all led to the same conclusion. The empire he had spent his life building. The military machine that had crushed dozens of civilizations was now utterly powerless before an enemy that had evolved beyond the need for conventional warfare. Open a channel to all fleet commanders, he said finally. Empire-wide broadcast. The communications array activated, linking him to every Vorthak ship, every military base, every command center across their conquered territories. Warriors of the Vorthak Empire, he began, his voice carrying the weight of a decision that would echo through history. For 1,000 years, we have believed that strength alone determines survival. We have conquered star systems because we could. We have enslaved civilizations because they could not stop us. He paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of generals who had expected to rule the galaxy. Today, we have encountered something that challenges everything we thought we knew about power. The humans we sought to conquer have become something beyond our understanding. They offer us a choice: withdraw from their territory and make reparations for our crimes, or face complete erasure from existence itself. Murmurs of outrage began to rise from various commanders across the empire. But Vorthak silenced them with a gesture. I have reviewed all tactical options. I have consulted our greatest strategic minds. The conclusion is unavoidable. We cannot win this war. We cannot even survive it unless we accept their terms. The display around him shifted one final time, showing a new image. Earth itself, but not as it existed in normal space-time. Instead, he saw the planet as it existed across multiple timelines simultaneously. In some futures, thriving and green. In others, scarred by war. In still others, transformed into something that transcended physical matter entirely. Effective. Immediately, all Vorthak forces will begin withdrawal from human space, he announced. We will comply with every demand made by the entity calling itself Captain Chen. Not because we choose to, but because the alternative is the complete annihilation of our species. He cut the transmission and turned to face his assembled generals. The silence stretched for long moments before General Morthak finally spoke. Supreme General, the warriors will not understand. How do we explain surrender to an empire built on conquest? Vorthak looked at the tactical display one last time, where impossible human ships continued their patient vigil around Vorthak worlds. We tell them the truth, he said quietly. We tell them that we encountered something that made us realize there are forms of power beyond anything we had imagined, and we pray that humanity's transformation hasn't cost them their capacity for forgiveness. As alarms began sounding throughout the fortress, not warning of attack but coordinating the largest military withdrawal in galactic history, Supreme General Vorthak wondered what other civilizations might be watching these events. How many other species had believed themselves the pinnacle of evolution, only to discover that consciousness itself could evolve beyond the need for physical limitations. The Vorthak Empire's age of expansion was over. What came next would depend entirely on whether the beings who had once been human could remember enough of their origins to show mercy to those who had shown them none. Epilogue: New Horizons. 6 months after the Vorthak withdrawal. Captain. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, watching as the last Vorthak transport ship left the Kepler system. The evacuation had proceeded smoothly, surprisingly so, given the Empire's reputation for ruthless efficiency. It seemed that even conquerors could learn when faced with forces beyond their comprehension. All prisoner exchanges complete, reported Commander Torres, one of her few remaining crew members who still existed primarily in normal space-time. The Vorthak have returned 847,000 human captives and provided full reparations for the 17 destroyed colonies. Chen nodded, but her attention was focused elsewhere. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, she could perceive layers of reality that normal humans couldn't even imagine. Past, present, and future existed simultaneously in her awareness, showing her the cascading effects of their actions across thousands of possible timelines. "What troubles you, Captain?" The voice belonged to Dr. Elena Vasquez, the quantum physicist, whose research had made their transformation possible. Like Chen, she had volunteered for the enhancement process that allowed human consciousness to exist outside linear time. Unlike Chen, she still occasionally questioned whether they had made the right choice. "I'm watching the ripples," Chen replied, gesturing toward displays that showed far more than any normal sensors could detect. "Our intervention here has prevented the extinction of humanity, but it's also fundamentally changed the course of galactic development." Through her expanded awareness, Chen could see other civilizations throughout the galaxy, grappling with the implications of what had happened. The crystalline hegemony was reconsidering their planned expansion into the Orion Arm. The Hive worlds had suspended their aggressive colonization programs. Even the ancient Watchers, being so old they remembered the formation of the galaxy itself, had taken notice of humanity's transformation. "They're all afraid," Dr. Vasquez observed, following Chen's gaze across the probability streams. "Every civilization that relied on conventional military power is wondering if they might be next." "Perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing," Chen mused. "For too long, progress in this galaxy has been measured by the ability to dominate others. Maybe it's time for a different kind of evolution." She turned toward the ship's quantum core, where the true heart of their transformation resided. The technology that allowed them to exist across multiple timelines wasn't just advanced science. It was consciousness itself, learning to transcend physical limitations. They had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had evolved beyond the need for territorial expansion or resource competition. "Status report on the other ascended vessels?" Chen asked. "All ships report successful completion of their assignments," Torres replied. "The Vorthak withdrawal is proceeding ahead of schedule. More importantly, we've received communication from several other species expressing interest in alternative approaches to interstellar relations." Chen smiled, an expression that rippled across multiple layers of reality. "Show me." The display filled with messages from civilizations throughout local space. The Theta Centauri Republic requesting diplomatic contact. The Spiral Arm Confederation proposing joint research initiatives. Even former enemies like the hegemony were suggesting trade agreements that didn't involve conquest or subjugation. "It appears our demonstration has had the intended effect," Dr. Vasquez noted. "The galaxy is beginning to consider that there might be better ways to interact than through force." "Beginning to consider, yes," Chen agreed. "But old habits die hard. We'll need to remain vigilant." She accessed the ship's temporal sensors, extending her awareness across the probability matrix that governed future events. In some timelines, their intervention led to a golden age of cooperation between species. In others, fear of humanity's transformation sparked new conflicts as civilizations banded together against the perceived threat. "The path forward isn't guaranteed," she warned her crew. "We've given the galaxy a choice between cooperation and extinction. How that choice is made will determine whether our transformation was salvation or simply another form of conquest. Commander. Torres looked up from his station. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's from the past. Chen focused her attention on the communication array. Sure enough, a message was arriving from Earth as it existed 3 months ago, before their intervention at Kepler Prime. The transmission was from Admiral Harrison, the man who had authorized the consciousness transfer project in humanity's darkest hour. Captain Chen, the Admiral's voice filled the bridge. If you're receiving this message, then your mission was successful. The Vorthak threat has been neutralized, and humanity has survived. But I need you to know that your success has created new challenges. The message continued, describing political developments on Earth that existed in the original timeline, before their intervention changed everything. Some human factions were calling for the Ascended to return and lead humanity to galactic dominance. Others demanded that the transformation technology be shared with all humans regardless of the consequences. We're caught between timelines, Dr. Vasquez observed. The humanity we saved doesn't entirely understand what we've become. Chen processed this information across multiple probability streams. Their transformation had been necessary to save their species. But it had also created a fundamental divide between those who remained bound by linear time and those who had transcended it. Perhaps it's time for the next phase, she said quietly. Captain? Torres asked. Chen turned to face her crew, her consciousness touching each of theirs across the quantum entanglement that bound them together. We prevented humanity's extinction by becoming something beyond human limitations, she explained. But we can't protect our past forever. Eventually, our species needs to choose its own path forward. She activated the ship's communication array, preparing to send a message that would reach not just Earth, but every human colony throughout space. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance, speaking to all of humanity across space and time. The immediate threat to our species has ended. The Vorthak Empire has withdrawn from human space and made full reparations for their crimes. You are safe. She paused, knowing that her next words would fundamentally change humanity's relationship with the universe. But safety isn't enough. The galaxy has seen what consciousness can become when pushed beyond normal limits. Other species are watching to see what humanity chooses to do with this knowledge. Will we use our transformation to become galactic conquerors? Will we withdraw from the universe entirely? Or will we find a third path? One that recognizes that true power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to choose when not to. The transmission reached across space-time, touching every human mind simultaneously. In research stations throughout human space, scientists began receiving detailed specifications for technologies they had only dreamed of. On colony worlds, philosophers and leaders found themselves grappling with questions that challenged the very nature of existence. What comes next is up to you, Chen concluded. We who have ascended will watch over humanity's children until they no longer need our protection. But the future of our species and our place in the galaxy will be determined by choices made by those who remain fully human. As the transmission ended, Chen felt a profound sense of completion. They had given their species not just survival, but the opportunity to choose what survival meant. Around them, the Defiance began to shift into higher dimensional space, joining the other ascended vessels in their eternal vigil. They would remain guardian angels for humanity, unseen but ever present, ready to intervene if truly existential threats emerged. But for the first time since their transformation, they were no longer humanity's only hope. They were simply its oldest children, watching with pride and anxiety as their younger siblings took their first steps into a universe that was far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had ever imagined. The age of human expansion through conquest was over. The age of human evolution had just begun. End of story.